Good morning, everyone. Secretary Radu, will you please call the roll?
Regent Bartel?
Here.
Regent Bradley?
Here.
Regent Crane? Here. Regent Danae Davis?
Here.
Regent Stan Davis? Here. Regent Drew? Regent Evers?
Here.
Regent Falbo?
Here.
Regent Loftus? Regent Menifee?
Here.
Regent Pruitt?
Here.
Regent Smith?
Here.
Regent Spector?
Here.
Regent Vasquez?
Here.
Regent Walsh?
Yeah. Here.
Regent Windan?
Here.
Regent Womack? Here. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Good morning again, everyone. Welcome to UW-Platteville. I'd like to thank our host, Chancellor Dennis Shields, and his team for all their hard work in preparing for this visit. We look forward to our meetings here both today and tomorrow, and to tomorrow's investiture ceremony. But without any further delay, I would like to introduce Chancellor Dennis Shields, who's going to invite us to celebrate UW-Platteville. Chancellor Shields, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to the Regents, my colleague chancellors, other guests. This has been an exciting week thus far, and we are extraordinarily pleased to host you for these 2 days of this Regents meeting. For the past 13 years, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville has been the fastest growing school in the system. We've nearly doubled in size in the last 13 years. And this growth has been, in large part, attributable to my predecessor, Chancellor Emeritus David Markey, and his vision with regard to the Tri-State Initiative. We believe, and I believe, that higher education must work to find ways to take larger control of our destiny. I'm pleased that one of the issues that will be discussed over these 2 days is the initiative by the Regents in the system, the new Wisconsin partnership. And it embodies, I think, what we've been envisioning for the past 8 or 9 months here in Platteville. And it recognizes that the landscape of the funding of higher education is shifting considerably. And what we've been trying to do here, and I think we've had great success, is to take greater charge of that in a number of different ways. One of the things that we're doing is we're in the planning processes of a major comprehensive capital campaign. We're ramping up our efforts at entrepreneurial academic activity and starting a new office that supports that. We've hired more grant writers. Our colleges and the deans and the faculty have been actively working to develop strategic plans and to set priorities moving forward. We're engaging in a innovative public-private partnership to build a new residence hall with the support of our foundation and a recently formed real estate foundation. So we're very excited about what's going on here. And to evidence that, we're going to show you a short video to show you some of the highlights of this campus. So, from there.
Since 1866, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville has been a pioneer in education. We began as the first state teacher prep institution and have never stopped that commitment to education, nor have we stopped challenging ourselves. In the last 13 years, UW-Platteville is the fastest growing institution in Wisconsin, increasing enrollment by 48% to almost 8,000 students. We are also the largest single enterprise in southwest Wisconsin, and UW-Platteville is a key player in the cultural and economic development of the tri-state region.
As we approach our 150th anniversary in 2016, we are facing new challenges. The rich tradition of this university and this community leave us well positioned to meet these new opportunities and continue our contributions as the state's pioneer in higher education. Today, we'd like to introduce you to programs that have helped and will continue to allow us to control our own destiny. We'll show you how our innovations have helped engage our students in real-world experiences and prepare the 360-degree person for the ever-changing world. While we control our own destiny, we enable our students to control theirs. It's been that way for nearly 150 years. We are the pioneers.
The Tri-State Initiative came about by the state of Wisconsin in that they identified workplace shortfalls. And some of those shortfalls, most of those shortfalls were areas of strength here at UW-Platteville, such as engineering, industrial technology, criminal justice, agriculture, business. Those are just to name a few. And those were strong programs here where we felt we could enroll students and then hopefully move them into the workplace right here in the state of Wisconsin. Students qualify for the Tri-State Initiative by choosing a major, which is in our Tri-State Initiative program, and being residents from Iowa and Illinois. They receive a discount on their out-of-state tuition and can enroll here at UW-Platteville. The Tri-State Initiative helps UW-Platteville control its own destiny as it has added faculty and staff positions, about 114 of them, and those are not funded by the state of Wisconsin. Those are funded through our Tri-State Initiative program. It's also added facilities that all students can use here on our campus. It has also helped to increase our diversity. We've recruited students from all over in Iowa and Illinois, and those students of color obviously have helped bring different experiences, different cultural understanding to our campus.
I think the way that distance education really helps UW-Platteville control their own destinies in a number of ways. First and foremost, as I said, we are helping the economy by allowing students to stay within their local geographic regions, stay within their professions, and move up within their professions while they're getting their college or master's degree. And so that's really key. The other thing that this allows us to do from a controlling our own destiny standpoint is we do operate on a cost recovery basis. So there are no state dollars flowing into the distance education model that we have here. Typically when we've developed new programs, we have received grants to be able to get them off the ground, and then within 3 years they have to be at a cost recovery status. So when we're charging our tuition and fees, it is higher than what the on-campus fees are, but we have people who are willing to pay that for the convenience associated with the programs. So by allowing the increase of students, not being controlled by geographic location, and being able to operate on a cost recovery basis, the more we can grow, the more that money can be used to not only support the online degree programs, but to support other areas on the UW-Platteville campus. And that's been a very successful model over the years.
One of the bigger things that we've had happening is the expansion in working with grants. And it's not grants just like, oh boy, we get more money, but it's allowing us to do some things that we would not normally have been able to do. A major grant with the National Science Foundation. Again, this is targeting our stronger students, but also our underrepresented students within the science and technology. The more that we can get in that do better, that place higher, that stay longer, that do complete their degrees, it's a better educated population. It's better for the state, it's better for the student, obviously.
One of the things that's been going on in the last year is we've completely redone our curriculum. We are promoting the theme of infrastructure across our curriculum. Infrastructure is also known as the built environment, the civil works. It's what makes our country and our economy work. We saw the value in incorporating that into our program. So we wrote a grant to the National Science Foundation, and they funded us a planning grant. They gave us money as a department to sit down and see what could we do to our program. One thing was, let's come up with a new class. It's infrastructure engineering that would serve as an introductory class. So as part of this new class, our students will go out and assess different portions of the infrastructure. And last spring we piloted that class for the first time, and we had 12 students take it, and they were overjoyed in their enthusiasm for that class. Several of them were sitting on the fence. Were they going to remain in engineering or not? And more than one, unsolicited, came up to me after class and said, this class has made a difference. I wasn't sure I was going to stay in engineering. Now I finally see what civil engineers do.
I think last year was an exciting year for us because we got 2 NSF grants Both are for the microsystems and nanotechnology education here in UW-Platteville. The first grant is called Major Research Instrumentation Grant that allows us to purchase a state-of-the-art atomic force microscope. And the second grant is nanotechnology for undergrad education grant that allows us to further develop our curriculum in this area. This will greatly benefit the students here. They will get a lot of hands-on experience, so they can get research experience when they're in undergraduate study. That's very exciting. For the students, like when they first work with that instruments, they all were amazed. Yeah, this is so cool here. Yeah, happen in UW-Platteville.
I think we've always been very strong in what we do in the classroom. We've got a group of great faculty and staff here in the classroom. That's always been a strength for us, and now we're trying to move beyond that and get students to be more active in the communities. Because there's so much learning that you just cannot replicate in the classroom. You can teach the foundations of it, but there's so much of it that they just learn so much more when they're really out in the, quote, real world, applying these things that they've learned in their classes.
For one of my classes, I have to do a service learning project, which is 15 hours for the semester. It's part of our requirement. I'm going out to the high school. I go out there twice a week and work with students with emotional and behavioral disabilities. It's just been a really good experience to get me out into the classroom and working with students.
PACE supports students, faculty, and community partners to work together in a collaborative way to take on some community challenge that's out there. And in the process, the students are practicing their education. So it's taking students out. We often refer to it as taking students out to the crash site. They're out to the crash site, sifting through the rubble with their faculty partners and with their community partners, trying to understand what went wrong, what's going right with that particular organization or that particular business. And in the process, they're learning their education, but they're also bringing in a lot of other disciplines and general education into bear.
Diversity, we are also getting our students ready to go out and work with a variety of students from different backgrounds. Some of our students work with K-12 schools in the Big District. We send some students over wintering to Mississippi.
My freshman year, I went to the high school and middle school and elementary school at Galena High School to observe the classes and to really learn what it's like to be a teacher. And they really help you get right into the program.
We had a lot of our students that were doing independent research with faculty members, so they can either get involved with a faculty's research project and hook in and just start working along with the faculty in research that they have already developed, or students could develop an independent project and carry out their own research project that they've designed themselves.
And some of these students do research over 3 or 4 semesters long, such that they can take a project to completion. So we're helping them develop these abilities to think on their own, so that then they can go and be successful elsewhere. Having this experience gives them a better feel for finding answers to the unknowns, finding answers to questions. The more difficult thing is finding answers to research questions, and just coming up with the question is the difficult part sometimes. So by doing the research, the students gain a better understanding of why were they learning the concepts in class, because they are applying it.
And we also had the development of the crime scene house, the forensic investigation crime scene house out at the Pioneer Farm. Well, the difference is now they can finally get a hands-on, the practical application of the theory and everything else that they learned in the classroom from a lecture. Where we used to have to use a classroom or a lab and pretend that it was a house. And so now they actually have a place they can go to, and there is a kitchen, there's a bedroom, living room, those types of things, with real evidence present. So the students get a hands-on application of what they learned in the classroom, and they also have the ability to continue to learn from it. There's only 3 universities in the United States that have forensic investigation programs. So it is a unique offering, and our students benefit from that.
It's great for the students to have that theory. They need the theory, but they also need some hands-on practice. That's another thing that sets our students apart, is the fact that they've actually done the activities and been out in the field and been able to work with people in the industry.
I am so excited about the opportunity to help students think about a study abroad experience. It is my driving force as a career here to get students off of our soil and onto a different situation, to go to a different country, because those students are going to be working with people from all around the world in ways that their predecessors haven't even begun to do. The work world is very different than it was 25 years ago. It is a global marketplace, and they're going to have to understand different cultures and be able to interact with different cultures in a very positive way.
One of the things in my mind that makes Engineers Without Borders such a great organization is the ability that students get to practice what they're going to eventually do in the field. In our chapter's recent trip to Ghana, we were able to design and construct a pedestrian footbridge over a 200-foot wide floodplain. This bridge helped the community of Giddy, where we built it, the children to get to school all year round, as well as adults to get to a train station to take them to market, to take them to church, to help them visit family, as well as a health facility. All of these projects are student-run, student-led, student-designed. We work with professional engineers and professional mentors, but I am able to, as an environmental engineer, practice what I'd like to do upon graduation right now as a student. And not only do I get to design it, but I get to travel and implement it and see the benefits of the project have on an entire community of people.
Basically, a student can study anywhere in the world they would like to. We have affiliate programs through our study abroad office, so the opportunities are endless, and it's a great opportunity for those students. Looks really good on a resume, gives them just that extra little notch above other students. I think the 360-degree person is extremely important to our employers. They want, of course, students that are knowledgeable in their area, but they also want students that can not only repeat facts and figures, but they want students to be able to think critically. And in order to develop that, you have to develop yourself as a whole person.
I am in Kappa Alpha Sigma sorority here at Platteville. We're a social service organization, so we work to do things on campus, to help out the campus as much as we can. We get together with the different Greek organizations. We do a lot of community service.
Platteville gives students an opportunity to excel in a number of different areas, such as academics, athletics, and even student employment. I combine athletics, work, schoolwork. It's all about time management for me. I'm looking forward to becoming a coach, and I'll be able to share the experiences that I've had with my student athletes and hope that they get the kind of experiences that I'm getting out of competing at UW-Platteville.
The liberal arts are so important, and we just really have to continue our mission as a strong liberal arts university, a well-rounded person, because we are preparing them for jobs that may not exist when they come in as freshmen. And to know that in the case of the arts will enhance their lives, and societies thrive when there's a true arts culture.
So one of the real goals, I think, of the English department, but particularly the freshman writing program, is that we really do engage students, and every student, in critical thinking and writing. And the amazing thing about the freshman composition program is that every single student, no matter what their major is going to be, all come through our program.
To make math exciting to students, to really bring it home, it's good to, I guess, integrate examples and a broad spectrum of examples. And they need to know that their math is useful. They can use math. They will use math, regardless of what their degree is. So finding those examples for those students, here is how you use it for your degree or for your everyday life. And so I think that helps if they can see where they use it.
PACE's mission is to nurture an environment where students, faculty, and community partners can all experience, grow, and make a difference. That's our slogan: experience, grow, and make a difference. And it's all about creating a 360-degree student.
When I came to Platteville, I did not know I was going to be here for 22 years. Platteville now is my home. It's a friendly community. I enjoy what I do. I feel there's no other place I should be than doing what I'm currently doing.
So one thing that hasn't changed over the last 13 years is the focus on students. When I was offered a position here, I was also offered a position at another university that was a research-heavy university. And I chose this university because there was no doubt, what everybody told me, students were number one. And undergraduate education was the most important thing.
Any teacher would tell you that one of the joys of teaching is when you see that student have an aha type of experience. One thing about this campus is we love students. One of the things that we're all here for, the glue that keeps us together, is we love students. And so when we see a student that has that kind of experience and comes back a changed person, it changes us a little bit too.
The students have the possibility to do anything they want to do. I've had students transfer here from Madison's honors program, 4.0 in their honors program. And they comment to me that at Platteville it's tougher. And I ask them, what do you mean it's tougher at Platteville? And they say, because you know my potential. And you know if I don't live up to it, you're going to push me to make sure that I meet my potential. I think that's what separates Platteville apart from a lot of other schools.
The most rewarding thing as a teacher, I'm asked this a lot, and the most rewarding thing is that when I finish here, I'm going to go over and teach yet another student. You keep moving forward. You just can't stop. You enjoy the past, but you say, what can we do better next? That's the reason that I still come to work.
Well, I think you can see in those vignettes why it is such an honor and a privilege for me to be the Chancellor at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. That's a small sample of what's going on here. And I would urge all of you to visit us whenever you'd like. It's a great place, it's a great town, and we're moving forward. I have one housekeeping thing. I got a question from someone who is interested in using our workout facilities. It's a great facility. It's brand new. My assistant Joyce upstairs on the second floor is busy putting together passes, and so if you want to get up early or stay up late and go work out in our new facility, that will be available to you. I look forward to a great meeting, and have a great day. Thanks.
I think that was really a great offer to the Board of Regents to use the workout facilities. Chancellor, I always find that a tired regent is a happy regent.
Good. Keep that in mind, President Riley. Thank you. Well, thank you, Chancellor Shields, and we are looking forward very much to the next 2 days, and you've gotten us off to a great start. We're now going to turn our attention to the 2011-13 biennial budget update. Just wanted to offer a couple introductory remarks before turning it over to President Riley and his staff. At our last board meeting, we reviewed Governor Walker's proposed 2011-13 state operating budget and engaged in a high-level discussion about the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership, our proposal to provide new operational flexibilities to all UW institutions. I think it is really and ultimately a proposal to allow all our campuses to, as Chancellor Shields has just put it, control their own destiny. We've come a long way in just a few short weeks. I've said before that tough budget times are tough budget times, but they shouldn't be times to pick winners and losers amongst our campuses. And I believe, and I think this board has endorsed the concept that the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership is a win-win proposition. And I'm delighted and proud and incredibly appreciative that 13 of the 14 chancellors have endorsed it. I think it's the penultimate compromise with the governor's budget that will allow UW-Madison to achieve all the flexibilities they need to continue to flourish while staying part of a UW system which has served the state well for over 40 years. We have listened and we have learned and we have heard the chancellors of this system on the need to push flexibilities if we are to receive them from the state down to the campus level. And we're now going to learn, I think, a lot more this morning about exactly how that can happen and the importance of that happening in the years ahead if the Wisconsin Idea Partnership becomes reality in the legislature. Last week, I know President Riley and a number of UW chancellors addressed the legislature's Joint Committee on Finance. This is the agency briefing, as they call it, where legislators engage in their first discussions about the state's biennial budget proposal in advance of taking any action on the individual components of that bill. The next step of the budget process begins today at UW-Stevens Point as the Joint Committee on Finance, I understand joined by a few people who will be coming to attend, holds the first in a series of public hearings. Tomorrow, the committee convenes again at UW-Superior. Although these events are hosted by UW campuses, they are intended to provide all citizens with an opportunity to address the legislature about various aspects of the state budget. Last week, when the committee met at the Capitol for agency briefings, a number of UW chancellors and colleagues joined President Riley to represent the university's interests. Chancellor Debbie Ford came with prepared testimony, but several others were invited by legislators to offer extemporaneous remarks, including Ray Cross, the Chancellor of UW Colleges and UW Extension, Mike Lovell from UW-Milwaukee, Biddy Martin from UW-Madison, Bernie Patterson from UW-Stevens Point, Rick Wells from UW-Oshkosh. In addition, I know Chuck Sorensen from UW-Stout was there, as well as Dick Telfer. Were there any other chancellors that I missed that attended? If not, you missed apparently a very interesting show. Any discussion of the UW system budget must begin with the UW system's vital mission and the premise that Wisconsin needs more well-prepared college graduates, more well-paying jobs, and more engaged citizens in the 21st century knowledge economy. We must, in essence, build the bicycle while we're riding on it. By that I mean if Wisconsin only attracts employers but we lack the well-educated workers to fuel their success, those companies will leave. If we only focus on producing more college graduates but there are no good jobs here, these mobile young people will go to where the jobs are. Because of the educated workforce we provide and the jobs we help create, the UW system must be the core pillar of the state's economic development strategy. This sentiment was echoed by several legislators at the UW system briefing. That is why UW leaders from across the state participated in a series of economic summits last year. We joined with elected officials, economic development specialists, business leaders, educators, and others to develop some innovative strategies. This process produced the Be Bold Wisconsin Prosperity Strategy, which we have shared with you at previous board meetings. This report also highlighted several areas related to UW, including the suggestion that we, quote, raise the percentage of four-year degree holders in the state to a level that puts Wisconsin in the top tier of states. The same report further recommended that we, quote, capitalize on the state's research and development strength, unquote, by supporting more research on UW campuses and creating new emerging technology centers to facilitate partnerships between UW campuses and private companies. I think it's really important to remind people of the concerted efforts we've made to partner with the business community and the strong support we've received from the private sector in our push to relieve all UW institutions from burdensome and expensive state laws and regulations that get in the way, ultimately, of meeting the goals on behalf of the Wisconsin idea and of the people of Wisconsin. To tell us a little more about the JFC testimony, here is our President, President Kevin Rogers.
Thank you, President Pruitt. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. Great to be here in Platteville, Dennis. As we talk about these various budget provisions, and many of them are daunting, you should know that I did ask the legislators on the Joint Finance Committee when I testified to look for any opportunity to reduce these funding cuts and help us find ways to manage the cuts most effectively in the interests of our students and others around the state. As Chuck said, I think it's important for us to keep our mission front and center in these discussions with the Joint Finance Committee and others. That is, any analysis of our budget must begin with the impact on students. Talking about all these big budget numbers, we can easily lose sight of the effect, the real-world impact on our 182,000 students, their academic preparation, and their pocketbooks. As Associate VP Frida Harris explained last month, The Higher Education AIDS Board section of the proposed state budget provides flat funding for the Wisconsin Higher Education Grant, the WEG UW program, the largest source of state financial aid for UW students. The number of students who qualify for financial aid at the same time is growing, and this program is already experiencing significant shortfalls. Taken together, these elements of the budget will hit low and middle income students from across the state, people whose families are already hit hard by the economic downturn. Also in the budget proposal, there are no additional funds to hold students harmless from tuition increases. That was done, you'll recall, through the need-based tuition incentive grants, or TIG, program that were used for the past 2 years to insulate low and middle income families from any tuition increase. That program, too, is flat funded and will not allow additional participants. Taken together, these funding choices have a big impact on a large segment of current UW students and those making the hard decisions about whether to enroll next year. I pledge to you that the chancellors and I will work hard to try to come up with ways to minimize the effects of this bad news on students. On the capital budget side, we know that the quality of our facilities often plays a big role in decisions that students make about where to enroll. The 2011 capital budget will have a positive effect, I'm happy to report, on UW campuses, providing long-term investments in facilities that will enhance teaching, research, and student life all across the state. So I know our Associate VP, David Miller, is anxious to tell you more about that budget, and I'll let him go to the podium with that. David.
Good morning. I hope you find this a little bit more informative than the last time I spoke to you. Thanks. When I could share absolutely no information because it wasn't public yet. I don't want to go into a lot of detail. I'm going to reserve that for the committee this afternoon and go into quite a bit more detail about the numbers and the impact. So I'll just give you an overview of what's in the budget. This is a chart that you're familiar with seeing that illustrates the all funds capital budget by funding source and type of project. The general fund column is in blue and totals about $385 million. The interesting thing about this budget result compared to the budget that the Board of Regents recommended is we built the budget on a total state borrowing estimate of $538 million, just as a marker of a target. And that was a 5% increase over last biennium. We predicted that the university would probably receive about 67% of that, or $360 million. So that was our target to build a budget toward. The budget as recommended by the Building Commission is a total state borrowing of $500 million, general fund borrowing, of which we're receiving $380 million, or about 76%. This is how the projects break down. The projects in the gray row are those that were enumerated in 2009, and the funding is released in this biennium. So the good news there is nothing changed. And that is the bulk, $222 million of the new general fund borrowing. The projects in the red row are those that are added, and I'm going to touch on those individually as we go through. These are the program revenue and grant and gift funded projects that were approved as requested by the board in totality. The interesting thing here is you'll see the total is about $229 million. In 2009-11, this list of projects totaled about $555 million, not including the Charter Street heating plant, which was all program revenue borrowing. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of half. That is due to the type of projects that we're doing now. There are fewer large new projects and a whole lot more renovation projects. And we'll illustrate a couple of those examples. This is the new education building rendering at UW-Eau Claire. That was in the advanced enumerated column. So we're very glad to see that going forward, a $44 million general fund supported project in design currently. with groundbreaking early next year. The second tower of the Institute for Medical Research at UW-Madison is fully funded in this budget. It's $67 million in general fund, but $67 million in gift funding. The project has really already begun because we were able to use the gift funding that was enumerated in the last biennia. This rendering shows all three towers. The third tower to the far right doesn't exist yet. This project funds the middle tower. You can make a picture look like anything. This is the currently under construction School of Human Ecology. When you visit Van Hise, you'll see this next door. It's under construction now. This is a rendering of the final addition. To your right is the historic original building, and to your left is the addition. This is a futuristic rendering of the Milwaukee master plan, because as you recall, the Milwaukee initiative was funded over 3 biennia. 2 major projects are underway. The interdisciplinary research complex will be built on the corner of Kenwood and Maryland, and I don't know if I can do this or not. Yeah. Here. And is in design now and is fully funded as well. This also shows, in a futuristic way, this is the area of Columbia St. Mary's Hospital, which we've now acquired, of course. The School of Freshwater Sciences. It looks like a freshwater building, right? It looks like it's on the harbor, and it looks like water. Very excited about this $50 million project that's now in design and will also break ground next year. The Madison Nursing Building, at last, finally is included in the budget. $17 million in gift funds, $17 million of general fund this biennium, $17 million of general fund in the next biennium. We are doing everything we can to maximize use of limited resources, and just like the School of Human Ecology, the general fund is split over 2 biennia, and we can get started, and the project won't be completed until the next biennia anyway. This is located behind the Rennebaum Pharmacy, which is the building you see in the background. The Forest Products Lab would be to the foreground. That's not in the picture. What I meant by doing more with the limited resources we have in renovations, this is Carlson Hall. You know about Carlson Hall because it's at Whitewater. We built a new school of business and economics, emptied this building, intended to do this last biennium, and the enumeration of it got stalled out in the last days of legislature, and it didn't get enumerated, but the Department of Administration helped us hold on to the money. It's been held in reserve. It's $17 million of savings from projects that were bid in 2009. And you can see the dramatic change that this project will bring. I mean, we're turning a Department of Corrections facility into an actual classroom building, essentially. It's going to be bright. It guts and replaces the entire interior. And for $17 million, and we are on budget. It's a very exciting facility to see such change, and it will be the new home of the College of Letters and Science. Similarly, our interior renovations, whether it be through classroom renovation projects or whole projects, this is in Sterling Hall at Madison. It had hardly been touched since the bombing, and it has 30-year-old seating, terrible lighting, virtually no technology, poor acoustics, and we turned it into this, a very modern classroom, lecture hall with high functionality, accessibility, ADA accessibility, great access to technology that the faculty use in all the lectures. One of the best things that the budget achieves is a totally new program. We've been in a predicament with all of the all-agency projects that you see. This is the long list of projects all on one page at the end of the agenda that we don't talk about very much. They are limited to a budget of $3 million. And it sort of sounds bad to say you can't do much for $3 million, but it's true because the projects are supposed to be inclusive of all the problems in the building. So we may be able to do a heating, ventilation project in a building for $3 million, but no one wants to go into that building and tear out all of the HVAC and not do anything else, and then go back in 2 years later and do the electrical upgrade. So that really makes a lot of the projects that need to be done unworkable in the all-agency program. So the Division of State Facilities, Department of Administration, the Building Commission, the administration heard us on this and created a new program. A flexible fund that we're going to start, that is started with $50 million, in which we develop whole building projects. And Carlson Hall is a good example of these. This is one that would have fallen into this category. So we have a list of about 30 projects already teed up that could use this funding, and we hope that this flexible pot of money to do whole building renovations of existing facilities grows in future biennia. But the fact that it started, it's changing the rules, it's a lot more flexibility for us to do this, we think will really help renovate a lot of existing facilities. Last but not least, the Health and Human Performance Building. This is going to ruin all my presentations because I won't be able to use these anymore once we tear them down. But you've seen these before. This is a kinesiology program in the basement of an old food service building. I mean, it's deplorable. It's always been recognized as such. This building has always been teed up. 12 years we've been asking for this. And finally funded. And in no small part to the efforts of Chancellor Dean Ben Galen, who stayed in Madison for 3 days. He was camped out like some other people have been camped out. and got this done. So kudos to you, Chancellor. This will be where the new building is located, the Hunt Knowles facilities. This is the Hunt Knowles existing facilities, and this will be new construction in that same area of campus. Residence hall renovations are now occurring, now that most institutions have built a new residence hall to give their student bodies some choice, especially for upper division students that want a suite-style experience, their own bedroom and around a single kitchen, those kind of things. We're going back at Platteville and at Stevens Point is farthest ahead in this and renovating all of these old 1960s, 1950s residence halls that had not changed very much. This particular project created a new entryway and replaces the windows, replaces all of the mechanical systems, just gets rid of the cinder block walls just by putting a skim coat on them and just makes them so much more habitable and aesthetically pleasing for the student experience. And we have a whole lot more of these projects teed up. They're very low cost, about $5 million for a 300-bed building. You can do all of these upgrades and really turn it into something that students want to be in. The all-agency projects, we are not, the sad part of the building program is that we're not making any progress at all in the real backlog of maintenance. These conditions still exist, and it's very hard to tackle. It's growing faster than we can get at it. We need to increase that flexible pool of money to do larger, more comprehensive projects at a faster rate in future biennia. So I thank you for your time and patience letting me run through this. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. Or
Regent Bartel.
David, the new program that you mentioned is very exciting. You mentioned that there is $50 million flexible enumeration that was just provided, but we have projects totaling nearly $350 million on the list. How do we fill that gap?
To get started, the projects that we can do this biennia are limited to those 4 institutions that were listed. There is not enough, probably in the $50 million, to do even the first project at all 4. So we have some work to do in how fast those particular campuses want to move, whether or not they want to phase those projects in a whole building. For example, 2 floors and then 2 floors in a phase 2. That would be workable because you could empty 2 floors and isolate it and still use 2 floors, that sort of thing, and still accomplish the whole building. But these projects are difficult for the campus because they require them to empty the building and have those classes elsewhere. So we have to work with those 4 institutions. And as the committee will see this afternoon in the 6-year plan, we hope that that becomes $100 million next biennium. One thing I failed to mention is the capital budget also includes access for us to $100 million of bonding for energy efficiency projects. We've done almost $80 million over the last 2 biennia, and these are projects from which the debt service is paid from the savings of reduced energy. So it's a great program, and they increased that from $50 million last biennium to $100 million this biennium, and we're by far the biggest user.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, David, for that snapshot of the capital budget. It's always very useful to be able to visualize what these monies actually will do across our campuses. You've done that very nicely. And this, too, I remind everybody, will be a very positive impact on jobs in the state. And as you know, the governor has said that he wants to create 250,000 new jobs in Wisconsin, and we are happy to contribute to this in that way, and we thank him for a very positive capital budget. While the capital budget is good news, the systems treatment in the proposed operating budget presents a lot more challenges. Specifically, the governor's budget removes $250 million in GPR for UW system over the biennium. Reflecting my remarks to this board, I explained to the Joint Finance Committee that cuts of this magnitude will have significant impacts on all our students, all our faculty and staff, and the educational programs and services that we provide. UW-Madison would absorb a 13% cut to GPR under the governor's proposal. The budget also calls for GPR reductions that average 11% at UW-Milwaukee, the 11 regional comprehensive campuses, UW Extension, and the 13 freshman-sophomore colleges. Because these institutions are more GPR dependent than UW-Madison, the relative impact of these cuts could be at least as severe on these campuses. To illustrate the impact on students, Chancellor Ford shared this letter in her remarks to the Joint Finance Committee. This is a message from a prospective student to an admissions ambassador and peer mentor in UW-Parkside's award-winning theater arts department, and I thought the board should hear it. Quote, I was actually planning on mailing my response letter this week. I unfortunately am not planning on attending the program at Parkside. Between the uncertainty with the UW system's Madison breaking off, as well as the forthcoming budget cuts to the UW system, I don't feel comfortable going to Parkside any longer. I'm going to a bigger college that seems much stabler at this time. I really regret this decision, and it was not taken lightly. If the circumstances were different, UW-Parkside would have been my final decision. I loved your program, and I loved the professors I met there. I wish the theater department the best of luck in the future, end quote. I think that illustrates how even the discussion of major cuts and major structural changes can begin to impede our educational mission even before the budget is finalized. And students aren't the only people who are concerned. Many campus colleagues worry that professional development, programmatic support, other services provided to faculty and staff around the state will be diminished due to a requirement that UW system administration take a 25% GPR cut. This reduction will make it harder for system administration to facilitate collaboration in joint programs and less likely that we will be able to work with campuses to achieve new cost savings. With that in mind, and with President Pruitt's endorsement, I am establishing a special committee of regents, campus colleagues, and system staff to help us decide which system functions we should drop or modify, as well as identify those of high value to the regents and the institutions. In addition to these cuts in the operating budget, our faculty, academic staff, and classified staff will lose more than $90 million in wages due to the higher employee contributions to retirement and health insurance benefits. Many people are under the impression that we can apply those savings, that $90 million, to offset the operating budget cut, the $250 million, but that is not the case. These givebacks will only hamper our efforts to close the gap between UW compensation and that offered by competing colleges and universities. You'll remember that the Competitive University Workforce Commission, ably co-chaired by Vice President Spector, took a hard look at UW's salaries and total compensation and verified that salaries for UW faculty and staff are well below their peer midpoints. In their analysis, the commission members noted UW's significant lack of control over positions and compensation. This is one of the operational flexibilities we are seeking as our campuses compete for talent in a nationwide and indeed increasingly a worldwide market. As we discussed last month, the governor's proposed budget provides those flexibilities to only one UW campus, and it does it in a way that fractures the UW system. However, the governor has said that he's going to work with us and with legislators from both parties to provide all UW system campuses with new managerial flexibility. That's clearly what's needed, and now. But why? What do we mean when we talk about flexibilities? I'll offer one example by analogy and then invite Senior Vice President Michael Morgan to provide some more detail. The best way to explain our budgeting problem is to envision a discussion around a family kitchen table in which members are looking at their resources and needs: groceries, utilities, transportation, clothing, and other expenses balanced against the total family earnings. In that scenario, if the price of gas goes up, and as I said to the Joint Finance Committee members, this is strictly a hypothetical example. If the price of gas goes up, the family might have to make the hard choice to cut back on groceries or clothing or other expenses. At the university, by contrast, no matter how well we manage our spending on groceries or clothing, we still can't use that money to put gas in the tank, even if that's where we have the greatest need. Without changing our governance structure or splintering the UW system, legislators can amend state laws in ways that will allow UW chancellors to use savings from the grocery budget to put gas in the tank. That is just one area of budgeting which is addressed in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. Since our last meeting, we've released details about that plan and how it might be implemented. Using the governor's budget proposal as a benchmark, we drafted specific statutory changes that could accomplish these reforms, all the while keeping our highly regarded UW system together. To tell us more about that, I want to ask Michael Morgan to come to the podium. Michael.
Thank you, Kevin. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
In the state budget process, the Wisconsin Idea Partnership is proposed as an alternative to the new Badger Partnership. As you're aware, and as Kevin just pointed out, the New Badger Partnership extends flexibilities only to the UW-Madison campus. The primary purpose of the Wisconsin Idea Partnership is to provide maximum management flexibility for all UW chancellors to lead their universities and colleges for the benefit of students, faculty, staff, and local communities. To accomplish this, UW System Campuses proposes amending the proposed 2011-13 biennial budget bill with new flexibilities under the current UW Board of Regents governance structure. What I will do today, hopefully in a very short period of time, is give you an update on where we are on the Wisconsin Idea Partnership statutory language, which we hope to see sponsored, as I indicated, as an amendment to the 11-13 biennial budget. UW institutions are asking for flexibilities in 6 areas. I'll number them for you. Budgeting, tuition pricing, number 2. Human resources, 3. Capital planning and construction, financial management, and purchasing and procurement. But before I get into the flexibility areas, let me point out to you and note for you what doesn't change under the new Wisconsin Idea Partnership. UW would remain a unified public university with public ownership under the control of the Board of Regents. Existing administrative rules regarding student code of conduct and faculty tenure, for example, would remain. Shared governance and other provisions of Chapter 36 would remain unchanged. And UW's commitment to transparency and accountability will remain intact. Let me just walk through some of the flexibilities areas. First by pointing out what the needed flexibility is, and then talk about some of the changes that we have incorporated into the Wisconsin Idea Partnership Amendment. Under budgeting, the flexibility we hope to see is the ability for UW campuses to move funds among appropriations with the flexibility to prioritize available funds to address emerging student, core institutional academic operations, and state economic development needs. Now, as you know, currently, general purpose revenue dollars and other funds are allocated to the University of Wisconsin system in earmarked silos, providing campuses with little, in fact very little or no ability to move funds among appropriation or the flexibility to reprioritize available funds in one area to address emerging campus needs in another area. This limits the tools that the chancellors may use to manage to the bottom line. Under the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership, the Board of Regents would receive from the state a block grant replacing this old appropriation approach that we currently see with one appropriation line, and that would be the block grant. Under the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership, the board would then move those block grants to the campuses. UW campus-specific block grants would allow the UW campuses and UW Extension to use GPR fees, and other program revenue for any appropriate university purpose. Campuses would continue to retain any revenue from institution-specific tuition increases and, of course, from new enrollment growth. The GPR block grant would permit UW campuses to reallocate funding among all budget lines to address institutional priorities as chancellors see them. Savings could be used to fund core academic operations, technology transfer, educational services, small businesses, a whole variety of focuses that chancellors may have. This GPR block grant would be accomplished by amending Wisconsin Statute Section 20.285 and related statutes to fold these specific item appropriations into a single general program operation appropriation under 20.285 paren 1 paren A. For those of you on the board who might want to, I should have mentioned this in the, before I began, for those of you who might want to take a look at the amendment as we've constructed it, you may go to our website. It's about a 60-page document, and it contains all the revisions that I will talk about here this morning. You probably won't find it very useful. It's hyper-technical. But it does exactly what I've laid out in budgeting and what I will lay out in the other areas. The other piece that I should mention is that the briefing that I'm providing for you this morning is a briefing that was also received by all of our chancellors. In fact, the Wisconsin IDEA Partnership amendment that we will be proposing is informed by the ideas that we received from chancellors as we went through that briefing process. There were changes that were made along the way and suggestions that were made, pursuant to the suggestions that were made by the regents. Let's move into tuition pricing. The needed flexibility there is the ability to set tuition levels to meet the needs of students, enhance educational quality, address competitive compensation challenges, improve student services, boost retention rates, and increase graduation rates. Under current law, the Wisconsin Board of Regents, University of Wisconsin Board of Regents, do have tuition setting authority, but it's limited and it's restricted so that undergraduate tuition rates are by and large determined outside the control of the board and UW campuses. In Wisconsin law, there are some factors that are looked at, and for the most part, the budget bill determines what tuition will be for UW campuses. The Wisconsin IDEA Partnership will provide the Board of Regents with authority to set tuition levels for UW campuses so that all campuses have the ability to meet the needs of students and employers while maintaining high levels of educational quality. This change, in conjunction with the budgeting changes that I talked about before, will remove multiple tuition appropriations, would improve the budgeting and planning process for all UW campuses. Policies would have to be developed to ensure that UW campuses remain affordable for Wisconsin citizens but given the history of this board in keeping affordability and accessibility in the forefront, that won't be a problem at all. This tuition flexibility would, of course, allow individual campuses to generate funds for unique value-added services and programs, establish niches within the higher education marketplace, or implement new pricing models. The ability to set tuition to meet the needs outlined in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership would require amending Wisconsin Statute Section 36.27. Human resources is the next area. In the human resources area, what we seek is statutory changes that will provide all UW campuses with the capability to address growing challenges associated with recruiting and retaining the quality and diversity of staff needed to further their institutional missions. The changes would address the need to provide incentive for innovative practices, rewards for creativity and initiative on the part of faculty, academic staff, and limited appointee or unclassified staff, non-represented classified employees, and represented classified employees. The big change here is that human resource policy decisions that are currently being made by the Office of State Employee Relations, which is at OLSER, would rest with the Board of Regents. The current system does not fully take into account UW's unique need to compete in the global market for human capital. The proposed statutory changes under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership would provide all UW campuses with the human resource flexibility necessary to address growing challenges associated with recruiting and retaining the quality and diversity of staff needed, as I indicated before, to further their institution's missions. With these changes, the board would have full authority for admission of the civil service system for UW system employees, including, but not limited to, creating university-specific classification titles, and compensation for faculty, academic staff, limited appointees, which are unclassified staff. I should just say unclassified staff, it's easier to say. Non-represented classified employees and represented classified employees. The board would have the authority to bargain with, or would take over the collective bargaining chore from OLSER. So the board would have the authority to bargain with all classified and unclassified unions and be responsible for approving and administering those contracts for UW system employees. The board would have the authority to determine which positions also are exempt from classified service or academic staff. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership in the HR area, we would have the kind of flexibility that's contained in the the New Badger Partnership. We believe very strongly that there's nothing that can be done in the New Badger Partnership that can't be done in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. Statutorily, we can make the changes necessary to get the flexibilities that we need to recognize that the university system is a much different environment, human resource environment, than the rest of state government. So we need to lay to rest that myth. UW system employees would also be exempt under the HR changes on the cap on earnings that could be received from other agencies during the year. To achieve this human resource flexibility under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, the following statutory sections would have to be amended: Chapter 16, 20, 36, 40, 111, and 230. I recite these statutes so you get a real appreciation of how challenging it was for us to get these amendments right. Now, as Kevin indicated, we had the contours of what we thought, the limits in terms of how far we could go with our flexibilities before us. because, as was indicated, the governor had already extended those flexibilities. So we had a pretty good understanding of how far we could go, and we had a pretty good understanding of what statutory sections we needed to amend. But notwithstanding that, our team put a lot of work into ensuring that we got this thing right. In the next area, capital planning and construction, the needed flexibility is the ability to reduce project costs by streamlining the planning, design, and approval processes, and by placing the responsibility and accountability for these projects closer to the users. Typically, that would be the campuses, those who actually pay for the projects. UW campuses face many state capital planning and construction restrictions and oversight mechanisms that significantly increase the time it takes to complete a construction project, and the project's overall cost is also impacted on that. Now, it's very difficult to talk about a little bit this area because of the wonderful news that David just gave in terms of how this budget treats UW's system in capital projects. But these projects' costs, all of the costs that David talked about, could be reduced significantly if we could streamline the planning, design, and approval process, and by placing a responsibility and accountability closer to the users or the campuses. That is, allow the chancellors some flexibility in managing these projects. Under the Wisconsin IDEA partnership, the legislature would continue to enumerate all projects over $500,000 funded with general fund supported borrowing or program revenue supported borrowing. The state building commission would continue to approve all projects over $500,000 regardless of sources of funds. The Board of Regents, however, would have the authority to undertake projects under $500,000 funded entirely from sources other than general purpose revenue or general fund supported borrowing without legislative enumeration or building commission approval. The Division of State Facilities would have control of and manage all projects funded with general fund revenue and general fund supported borrowing. The Board of Regents would have the authority, however, to undertake and oversee the management of projects funded entirely from sources other than GPR or general fund supported borrowing, such as program revenue and revenue generated from gifts and grants for those projects. The Building Commission would continue to look at design reports, and any program involving debt, the Building Commission would continue to have some oversight responsibilities. UW campuses could manage all aspects of non-GPR and non-general fund supported borrowing projects, including hiring architects, engineering consultants, bidding, contracting, and providing project supervision. The Division of State Facilities, DOA, will continue to be able to charge a minimal fee on GPR and general fund supported borrowing projects. But all other projects outside of those projects funded with those dollars, the fees could, as been pointed out by many of our chancellors, those fees could be reduced on projects that they, meaning chancellors, would manage on their campuses. The board will be able to accept gifts of land and other real property, or to allow privately owned or operated facilities to be constructed on university land. The board would have independent authority to also enter into off-campus leases for space and to sell real property. The statutory sections that would have to be amended to achieve these flexibilities are Wisconsin statutory sections Chapter 13, 16, and 36, all of whom would have to be amended to allow for the WIP flexibilities. In the area of financial management, it's very straightforward, the flexibility that we're asking for here. The ability to manage the university's finances and investments and retain all interest earnings on university resources. Under current law, UW campuses can't manage their own finances and investments. The state, in many cases, sweep those accounts and take all the interest from the earnings on those funds that they manage, and so that there's a disconnect between the dollars that are held, UW dollars that are held by the state, and the earnings that are earned on those dollars. The Wisconsin Idea Partnership would allow the Board of Regents to oversee revenue and interest earnings on program revenue, that is tuition, some auxiliary accounts operation, and other interest earnings from other program revenue operations. In order to preserve the state cash flow, however, we would have to allow those funds to be managed by the State of Wisconsin Investment Board and the local government fund. The state uses funds to manage cash flow issues that arise during the course of the year. But notwithstanding the fact that those funds would remain in the SWIB accounts, State of Wisconsin Investment Board accounts, the interest earnings on those dollars would accrue to universities in the University of Wisconsin system. Additionally, the board would gain authority to invest any and all surplus funds and retain interest earnings on those funds also. And some examples of surplus funds involves auxiliary accounts for the most part, residence halls dollars, food service dollars, some tuition funds, and some dollars that are generated through programs offered by campuses like non-credit adult courses. Statutory limitations on income accumulation and funds holding specific gifts, grants, and requests would be removed. Statutory limitations on application fees would be removed. And finally, the board will be able to determine the percentage of trust funds that may be held in common stock. Right now, there's a limitation of 85%. Which in talking to Debbie Durkin and doing some research, we could not figure out why that limitation applies, but it would be moved under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership Amendment. These financial management revisions would be achieved by amending Wisconsin Statute Sections Chapters 16, 19, 25, 36, and 227. Once again, there's been some discussion about whether or not these changes would, in additions to the changes in the budget that take away the appropriation lines for dollars that we receive from the state, would shield university funds effectively from sweeps by the state. Again, we believe that we can achieve protection from those kinds of sweeps by amending the law as we have in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. There's nothing magical about the authority that will provide it any more protection from state sweeps than the changes that we are proposing in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. We believe very strongly that inasmuch as we have those statutory protections, whether we're in an authority or out of an authority under current structure, the shield is there. And then we have one more flexibility, and that's in the area of procurement, the ability to manage the purchasing of goods and services related to higher education mission and participate in higher education purchasing consortia to reduce the cost of instruction, research, and public service. And we also want the ability to manage fleet vehicles, travel policy and contracts, insurance, and workers' compensation programs to reduce the costs of instruction, research, and public service. All of the University of Wisconsin system campuses must adhere to, under current law, strict regulations that govern the procurement of goods and services. These laws apply uniformly among state agencies, ignoring the specialized needs of UW campuses, and prohibiting the use of other purchasing tools that could actually enhance operations and reduce costs for our campuses. Except as specifically delegated under the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, the Department of Administration will continue to have primary oversight over procurement. It's clear that that's going to continue. The Board of Regents would be delegated the authority to enter into contracts, however, for specialized university-related materials, supplies, equipments, and services. So that in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, there's a recognition that there are certain purchases that are so outside of the rest of state government and so unique to UW system purchase that we, meaning our campuses and universities, should control those purchases. This authority, of course, would be further delegated down to the campuses. Additionally, the UW campuses would manage their own vehicle fleet and travel arrangements, something that I'm sure all of you covet and would enjoy. Currently, about 85% of all the travel for the state, I think I'm right about that, about 85% of all the travel for the state is done by UW system employees, faculty, academic staff. But the state controls all of that activity, makes all the contracts, does all the work necessary to ensure that that travel is done, hopefully efficiently. The Wisconsin Idea Partnership would change that equation. So as you can see, significant changes. And what you will note, and I'll ask you to take a look at this, in your packet at your site, at your seat, is a document with the title Current Laws Compared with New Badger Partnership and Wisconsin Idea Partnership Proposals. This is a comparison between on the flexibility areas that in the flexibility areas that are talked about between existing law, the new Badger Partnership, and the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. What you'll find is that to a large extent the Wisconsin Idea Partnership and the new Badger Partnership are almost identical. They're very, very similar, except in some very obvious areas. We don't ask for an authority as part of our structure. And as part of our financial services piece, there's not a request to allow for UW system universities to move gifts and grants into their private foundations. But this is a great summary that allows you to compare what current law looks like in the two proposals that hopefully will be before the legislature. There's another piece that you'll find at our website. It's called the Wisconsin Idea Partnership Summary. You've seen this, but one of the improvements of this piece is that under each flexibility area, after the summary, there are some examples that have been provided to us by our chancellors on how, given the increased management flexibilities in a variety of areas, they would use those flexibilities to improve their campus operations. So those are two documents that I would ask that you take a look at and confer with. Unless you have some questions of me, I'm going to, yes.
Michael, thank you for that presentation. It's very helpful. I have reviewed the comparison between the new Badger Partnership and the Wisconsin Idea Partnership proposals, and I have looked at that summary. And I've sort of made my way through this 60-page draft of the amendment.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I didn't say I read every section. And that's what I want to ask about. As I understand the concept of the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, it is to obtain the flexibility and independence that we have been asking for as long as I've been on the Board of Regents, and then push that down to the campus level in most instances.
Yes.
And I do agree with you, by the way, that the public authority, there's nothing magical about a public authority. You could call it a public institution, you could call it a public board, you could call it whatever you want. It's a creature of statute, and it has whatever authority is given to it by the legislature, which of course could be changed in the future, and we just don't know. But what I don't understand from this comparison and from what you said is, where is it reflected that the Board of Regents, if it gets this authority, the flexibilities and independence, where is it say how that's going to be delegated, how it's going to be pushed down? I didn't see it in the statute. And if it's not in the statute, then it's completely up in the air as far as whether this board or future boards will do what we are saying that we will do. Am I correct that it's not in the statute?
You are correct. It's not in the statutes. The Board of Regents would have to take affirmative action to push the flexibilities largely down to the campus level. Yes.
Now we have 13 chancellors supporting this proposal, and what they have to go on is our promise that this is what we want to do. We can't speak for the Board of Regents next year or the year after that, or for what the system president intends to do. Does it make sense to include in the legislation some formalization of that promise, something that assures the chancellors that these powers and flexibilities, the power to budget, the power to keep auxiliary funds, all of that stuff will be at the campus level, not at system level?
Yeah, in our discussions about doing exactly that, one of the challenges we had was how do we do that in a way that provides flexibility, so to speak, for the Board of Regents and chancellors to make adjustments on how all these flexibilities will work to the future with changing circumstances. We felt very strongly that the Board of Regents, this Board of Regents, who will be delegating much of this, if we're successful, this Board of Regents will be delegating all of these pieces down to the campuses. This Board of Regents would, in fact, make that delegation, and has already indicated in your March 10th resolution that you intend to delegate to the strongest extent possible to the campuses. So, Regent Bartel, the decision right now, and certainly we can revisit this, was that not put all these delegations into the statute so as to restrict flexibility to the future, the change according to needs. And as you know, it is very much more difficult to change state statute than it is to change policies of the board.
But shouldn't that concept be reflected in the statute, even if you can't go into details about that? Shouldn't that concept of passing that authority down to the campus level be somewhere reflected in the statute so that the Board of Regents has guidance now and in the future as to what is intended by this change?
Well, if that's the will of the board, then we will search for ways to, in fact, do just that. In the preamble to the amendment and in some other ways, perhaps we can make it very, very clear in the legislative record that the intent is, in fact, to push these flexibilities down to the campus. I see that our General Counsel Tom Stafford is standing in the back.
Let me comment first, because I know we've given you a lot of detail, and a lot of regents have questions, and this is great. This is the intent. One thing I wanted to add to what Michael said in response to Regent Bartel is, and I'll talk about this later when we are talking about our accountability reporting. We'll do a little bit of that this morning and then really get into the detail. Based on the conversations with Joint Finance Committee members and the chancellors, I'm going to suggest that we make, as a regular part of our accountability report, how we are devolving these flexibilities and authorities. And we make that part of our written report every year, and we testify in front of the two higher ed committees in the legislature about how we're doing that. So that's another kind of assurance that the intent here is to press those flexibilities down without having the Board of Regents cede its governing responsibility entirely. But I think the Council has something.
President Riley, Regents, the specific question of whether there's need to put something in statute sort of generally saying this is what the board will do, it's already there, and it's in Chapter 3609 under the board's responsibilities. 3609F says, quote, "The board shall delegate to each chancellor the necessary authority for the administration and operation of the institution within the policies and guidelines established by the board," close quote. So it's already in there that that's something the board is required to do.
May Regent Welbeck, I know, was interested in asking a question.
Yes, I was, and I am. And thank you very much, Vice President Morgan. My question is, and let me just preface it, there's a perception in the public arena that was specifically articulated by our governor last Thursday, and let me specifically state the quote: "Systems administration has morphed into a cumbersome bureaucracy that siphons money from classrooms while imposing more red tape on our campuses." And my question is, as we look at WIP, how in fact does that impact the way the system allocates funds for personnel, resources? There are a lot of changes here. And I want to specifically, if you will, I would like for you to address that statement.
Well, you know, I'd like to address the governor's statement, but I don't have details in what's that drove him to the conclusions that he made. Let me just say that, you know, since I've been there, since I've been at UW system, what I've learned is that we are one of the most efficient operations as measured by the number of dollars that we spend for operation of any university system in the country. We almost annually rank below the average spend in that area, in the area of administration. The other piece is that the system works very closely with chancellors on campuses to try to help reduce red tape. And my observation has been that that relationship is a good one. What the Wisconsin Idea Partnership does is give us a new framework which we can strengthen the way that we work together as a system. It will fundamentally change the way, for example, that we do budgeting. We will continue to look at what the needs of the campus, the chancellors will continue to look at what their needs are. There will be continued state funding, but that funding will come in a much different way, which will allow them a lot more flexibilities. Now, if you want to look at red tape, and if you characterize this appropriation structure that we currently have as red tape, that red tape is not being imposed by the UW system administration. It's been imposed by the state. If you look at HR, for the most part, HR is controlled by the Office of State Employee Relations. That's a division of the Department of Administration, my old department. If we want to look for the imposition of red tape on the part of an agency and state government, that's probably where you might want to look. It doesn't come from system administration. System administration tries, I think, to work efficiently to ease the administration of what is a very onerous, sometimes can be a very difficult HR system. An HR system that doesn't really truly appreciate the differences between, the university environment in HR and the environment on the other side of state government. So if you ask me to comment on what the governor is driving at, I can offer you no insight there.
Regent Vasquez, and I'll come to it.
Let me go back to the issue of the role of the regents relative to the flexibility. I would be very hesitant to ask that more language be added in state statutes that regulates exactly how we are supposed to go about doing flexibility. I think that's somewhat of a contradictory concept, that we want flexibility, but we want embedded more in statutes to tell us exactly how we're going to do all the flexibility. I would rather that we stay with the language that was just read to us by counsel and really have it be, I think it is very clear what is being proposed here, that there is a responsibility that the regions will move these flexibilities forward. To try to ask that in that kind of how we exercise the flexibility be embedded in statute would put us right back into some of the discussions that we have been having, which is state statute is governing us too much. State statutes are controlling us too much. State statutes are telling us too much what to do. And then we may realize later on that we don't have the flexibility, therefore we have to go back to state statute to try to change it. And so, at least from my perspective, I clearly understand as a region, and I would think that future regions would understand not only the intent, but the spirit of all of this desire for flexibility. And so, rather than asking that we embed in state statute how we actually go about doing the flexibility, I think it would be best that we not do that, and really have the faith and trust that not only this board, but future boards will actually exercise that flexibility in an expeditious manner so that we don't have to go back and change statutes because we realize we don't have the flexibility anymore.
Thank you. Regent Davis.
Michael, I have two questions that are in the area of clarification, if you will. So on page 3, under the capital planning and construction, that's my first question. There is under the WIP, is that what you all are calling it now, WIP?
We're calling it the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. So I don't know what WIP came from.
Okay.
I don't think you want to.
Everything gets everything gets an acronym around here. So okay, Wisconsin Idea Partnership. There is a description about mid-page that says that that Wisconsin Idea Partnership, much like the new Badger Partnership, is proposing certain flexibilities. But there's this language that says UW System Board of Regents delegates this flexibility to all UW-Madison projects and to any other UW system institution on a project-by-project basis. So I would like a little elaboration on all versus project by project. That's one. Number 2 is with respect to accountability at the end. There is a recitation of current statute of the kinds of data that are reported out in our accountability report. There's a long laundry list thing here.
Yes.
And then when you get to the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, it says we're going to work this out with the legislature and the governor. And I just wanted to understand the clarification there too. Are we wanting to? Do we find this list? I don't want to presume to know why we just didn't say we'll do it. This is our report.
Well,
so those are my two.
I could answer a question, or I could defer to the president. But what we were trying to point out is that currently we have a framework, a structure, our accountability report that looks at a number of important measures that are important for us to understand as we do our business year over year. And important measures for the Wisconsin legislature as well as the governor to understand in terms of whether or not, in fact, we are providing quality education, having an impact on economic development in the state. Those measures has, I think, been refined over the years, and I think they've served us well. They do give us a good indication of whether or not we're making progress in those areas that are important. I think what we will do, however, as we work through the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, and this came up at the Joint Finance Committee meeting, is we would enter into a dialogue with legislators to ensure that we are capturing data and reporting on standards that are important to them, things that they deem are appropriate, so that we don't impose what we believe is important as the only set of criteria for measuring progress, but we also take into consideration what the legislature deem it appropriate. One of the things that came out during the Joint Finance Committee is that many of the members of Finance believe that our accountability, we have too many accountability measures, that we might want to shrink them, to shrink the list. President Riley has, Kevin has made it clear that, you know, a conversation with legislators is important. And he also mentions the, is it North Carolina or South Carolina discussion that's going on, South Carolina discussion that's going on now, where they've basically been able to work out with their legislature and governor a set of, I think, five criteria that they look at in trying to gauge whether or not they're moving forward. As it relates to the construction and planning piece, I'm going to ask David Miller to talk about that. He's actually done a lot of thinking about how we advise the board in terms of moving construction and planning delegation to the campuses.
Thank you, Michael. Regent Davis, I thank you for the question, because I think the capital area poses a really good model for what we have to consider in delegation. With UW-Madison, they have about 10 times the number of buildings that most of our institutions have on average, and they have commensurate staff. They have a team, a large team of licensed architects and engineers on staff running those facilities. They are ready and have been preparing to, even for Madison, in time, not tomorrow, but in time, to do projects without the Division of State Facilities. The Division of State Facilities is a very large number of people and professional services. And so I apologize for using a show and tell that you can't see, but I can make this available. But this is my short list, very short list of the major project components and specialty services that we have to develop to be able to do a project from inception to commissioning. There are 13 major components. One of those major components is construct the building. This is not flipping a switch and all of a sudden we're all going to be able to do this. It involves large numbers of people. We have to determine, are we going to employ those people, or are we going to contract out all of those services? That's a cost-benefit analysis, a very important cost-benefit analysis, because if we're going to capture any savings that we claim that we can't fritter that away. We have to actually produce that efficiency that we believe that we can. But raising our level of professional services system-wide is no small thing. And so what we envision doing, and why that wording is there, is doing this with each institution and having them determine, do they want to hire permanent staff? Do they want to hire project staff? Do they want to contract out those services? Do they want to hold the contract? Or do we want to hold those contracts centrally so that if there's a legal challenge, we have one legal staff defending a common contract across 13 institutions? These are very big questions we have to sort out. And so that's why it is the way it is.
Regent Loftus.
Thank you. Well, my comments and questions are more for the board members. All of the board members, colleagues, you've been nominated by a governor, you've been approved by a state senate, and to get to that point, you've all been leaders in your field. And you have a responsibility to all of the people of the state. And as you know, what leaders do is they state the obvious, because sometimes that's not obvious to everyone. So, we have a very divided state. We're adding to the division by presenting, or seeming to present, two competing proposals to the legislature. The Chancellor of Madison has written to the other chancellors suggesting a legislative compromise. being a former member of the legislature, I'm reading a legislative compromise. I don't know if that's a compromise you make with other chancellors. Authority concerning legislative matters is statutorily assigned to the UW System Board of Regents. In turn, we authorize the UW System President to represent the board. We do that under the explicit agreement and assumption that the President consults with the board. And in this way, we come to the legislature with one voice. And we have an obligation to the people of the state of Wisconsin to get that one voice. So I would hope that we get the Board of Regents back in the action here, and that any proposal that goes to the legislature go through the President after consultation with the board, and that the chancellors just sort of get over the idea that they're going to negotiate with each other and have some type of compromise. And if there's any objection to that sentiment by any of the board members, I would like to hear it.
Is that a resolution, or is it just a sentiment?
It's a sentimental resolution.
I second that.
She seconds it. Okay.
Richard Bradley.
Well, Regent Laux is I'm sympathetic to that, and what you're describing has been troubling to me as a board member. But I think we also ought to raise the question, and that is, if the governor or a deputy of the governor calls up Chancellor Gao and says, I'd like you to come and talk to me because I've got some ideas and I'd like to get your thinking. Now that conversation can be short, that conversation could be very wide-ranging, and I think we ought to discuss what a chancellor is supposed to do under your idea, who is solicited, even solicited directly by the government.
Well, a good observation, and let me give you first-hand experience. There's nothing wrong with that. It happens all the time. When I was in the legislature, I was usually the one calling the chancellor. But I can remember President Shaw and Chancellor Shalala and all of the other chancellors. They came to the legislature with one big voice and also came with the concerns of each of their campuses within that. Nothing wrong with that. But I think what I'm trying to say is, hoping I'm trying to articulate, is that we have the statutory obligation as the Board of Regents to govern the system. And a budget proposal, which this is, comes from us. And so I think we should have one budget proposal in this area.
Mr. Walsh.
I want to reverse a little bit and get back to Jeff's comment, but I don't think we're disagreeing. At the last board meeting, we made a proposal and a resolution, and the Wisconsin Idea Partnership has been passed, and that's what we're advocates for. I don't want to revisit how we got here, but I do want to address what we're for and be responsive and sensitive to what Jeff was asking. And I think Jeff was saying, how do we give more comfort to the chancellors that what we're proposing addresses some of their concerns? Now, in my world, and I hate to talk like an attorney, I spend a lot of time looking at statutes. And I'm old enough to remember when Chapter 36 was rewritten to accomplish merger, and it took a long time to do it. And in doing it, they created a document much like the Constitution, in the sense that it is vague and needs subjective and needs a lot of court hearings and a lot of body of law to interpret it. Let me just point out two things. And I have the statute in front of you. This isn't by memory. The Board of Regents are empowered to do something. We're empowered to promulgate rules to protect the lives, the safety, et cetera, of the institutions. But specifically, if the primary responsibility is for governance of the system, which shall be vested in the board, and then it gives examples. And it specifically says to promote the widest degree of institutional autonomy within the controlling limits of the system. So in a sense, for Jeff, I mean, we have a general statement that it is a specific purpose and responsibility of the boards to address those issues that the chancellors are concerned about, and that Kevin says is given some suggestions on implementing. Now, the irony of this statute to me is that, you know, when I first joined the board, I said, what is assured governance? And I discovered that none of us know and never will know, because another provision of the statute says, the faculty of each institution, comma, subject to the responsibilities and powers of the Board of Regents, comma, the president and the chancellor of each institution. And the rest of the provision says that they're going to run the institution. And so what does it mean to say subject to? You go back to the powers. So this document we have in front of us, it took years to write this, and since then years to interpret what these provisions meant, has a lot of power in it. And I could say to you, I'm kind of comfortable that we're charged with the autonomy, but if there are some specifics vis-a-vis the autonomy and pushing down the flexibilities, tell us what they are. We'll write it in policy, or perhaps we'll say, let's have another mission statement in the statute. But we need to deal with the details, and I don't think we should get confused with the details. I agree with Jeff that we need to give them that comfort. I agree with Tom, clearly, that it's our job to propose legislation. Now, the fact that we have two pieces of legislation, I don't want to go there. We're there. Let's deal with it. We dealt with it at our last meeting. Let's promote it. Let's fine-tune it. Let's be responsive to everybody, all of the chancellors, and let's move forward.
If I could just add before I recognize something, just to bring from David's historical time of the founding and the creation to yesterday, in which you were there. I just wanted to call the attention of this board to a letter that Vice President Spector and I sent yesterday to the Joint Committee on Finance. And I'll just quote a couple sentences. The board recognizes the benefits of the Wisconsin Ideal Partnership will be greatest if those management tools are made directly available to each institution where they can do the most good. We write to you today to share the Board of Regents' commitment to delegate to each chancellor the flexibilities contained in the Wisconsin Ideal Partnership while maintaining necessary Board of Regents oversight responsibility. The Board of Regents, at its March 10th meeting, affirmed this commitment when it approved a resolution in support of the Wisconsin Ideal Partnership. That resolution said, in part, be it further resolved that the UW System Board of Regents will delegate the new flexibilities directly to each UW institution while ensuring transparency and appropriate levels of board oversight and public accountability. So that is from when to yesterday. Today we can do something else, but that's where we were yesterday at least. Regent Falvo.
I want to make an observation that supports that, goes along with what David was saying too. Our job, and we didn't talk enough, we're talking about how we're going to administer this from top to bottom. And I would suggest that we're going to administer it from bottom to top. And our primary role as a system is to provide service and to advocate for our universities. And our way of doing that, and our control of doing that, is to hire the best people to run our universities. That's our primary responsibility. Our next primary responsibility is to let them lead. So if we keep those things in mind, let's use what we have. Let's use the resources we have from the bottom up, not the top down. Thank you.
I know we're going to hear from some chancellors. Chancellor Cotton and Chancellor Mark.
Chuck?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, can I go to Regent Drew and then come to you two? Regent Drew?
Thank you. I would like to say, as far as the chancellors, they are hired by the Board of Regents. They're not hired by an individual campus. They're hired by the Board of Regents. And therefore, when it comes to policy that affects the entire system, I do agree with the sentiments expressed before. We should speak with one voice as the Board of Regents when it comes to policy that's going to affect all the campuses. Second thing, I have a specific question regarding the capital planning and construction area, where it talks about the bidding and contracting and the exemption from Section 16.855. And I see that the Wisconsin Idea Partnership says that we would be required to adopt policies that would ensure public and competitive bidding and minority business and veteran goals, as opposed to the New Badger Partnership, which is specifically exempt from those statutes, and there is no requirement that they adopt any policies. I assume that would be then up to the board, or the proposed board, which 11 members would be appointed by the governor without Senate confirmation to decide if they wanted to do that, or are they, could anybody answer the question, or are they exempted from doing that and would be prohibited from setting public bidding and minority and veteran and business goals?
Well, Tom?
Regent Drew, they are, under the New Badger Partnership in this particular section, they're exempted from that particular statute. So they're not statutorily required to do that in the future, but they could, through policy, put something like that into place if they chose.
I'm sorry, yes, Regent President.
In the area of human resources, our summary talks about the proposed statutory changes would provide all UW campuses with the capability to handle their own, respond to competitive needs and so forth. Are we saying that it's each university campus, or is it all campuses would have, for example, a classification system of the UW system that would be different from the state? Or are we saying that UW Stout has a employee classification system for its needs, and UW Milwaukee has an employee classification system for its needs?
The Wisconsin Idea Partnership certainly gives enough flexibility to do exactly what you just pointed out. That is, each campus could have differing, approaches to how they do titling and classifications for their specific campus needs. However, I think what we would want to try to do is to try to understand, as a policy, the Board of Regents would have to state a policy in working with the chancellors in terms of what the rules might be in terms of overall system-wide, what classification and other matters would look like. It seems to me that you would want to not have a system that would be unwielding in terms of how how it would be operationalized for purposes of compliance, legal, any number of areas that might be impacted. So I anticipate that we would probably have to put in place a process that's very similar to what David laid out, where on a campus-by-campus level we would have to go out and talk to HR professionals about how these new flexibilities would be operationalized on their campuses, and understand if there are some general rules, right, that as a matter of course all the campuses should adhere to.
And then second question, as far as the tuition pricing piece. You know, we publish our doctoral campus tuition and our comprehensive campus tuition and our college's tuition, but students and families know that they really need to look specifically what they're going to pay at Eau Claire, or specifically what they're going to pay at La Crosse or Green Bay. So if this Wisconsin Idea Partnership were adopted, we are saying that if you want to know what you're going to pay in tuition, you're going to look at each campus, because each campus is going to have its own tuition pricing setup. There isn't going to be a University of Wisconsin system comprehensive campus tuition schedule like there is now.
I think I'd say that that's basically true, although I'd also add, Regent Bradley, that there really isn't one now, because as you alluded to, the tuitions are different across our comprehensive campuses depending on the interplay with fees and the rest, and differential tuition. So we've already moved toward, quite a ways toward, a differentiated tuition scale at our institutions.
So if the Wisconsin Idea Partnership language were approved, we wouldn't have campuses coming to us with all these differential tuition proposals anymore.
That would be the idea. Although
that alone is a good reason.
I just wanted to, oh my goodness. Okay, I just wanted to build, because I know we want to hear from some chancellors. I know there are a couple more regents that have questions. On our hosts' forbearance, the question is, can we keep going here till 12:30 without causing major disruptions on Chancellor Shields? Or is that acceptable? Great. Okay. Let me take a couple more regents, then we really do want to hear from a number of chancellors, I know. So let me go with Regent Crane and then to Regent Wingate. Regent Crane.
We took strong action at our last meeting, and this has been very informative and very helpful. Is there any additional action that you're looking for from the board today, or is that unnecessary? And then obviously the important thing that will happen later is the active role that we take in promoting it.
I can try to answer that. I do not believe, unless the board would like to take any additional, I think this board spoke very loudly and very clearly last month about what we are for. The purpose of this was really to begin to, again, put additional details and sort of meat on the bone in terms of what the specifics is, as Senior Vice President Morgan has outlined, how we are moving forward and how we are going to achieve what we think is an important idea. So I think the second part, Regent Crane, of what you talked about is clearly going to be very important, as it has been, and certainly the advocacy of this board as well as the chancellors in the system and others with a stake in this thing going forward is going to be very, very important. So, Regent Wingate, and then we'll go to hear some chancellors unless there's additional board.
Sure. I just want to talk quickly about tuition setting authority and maybe address some of the concerns I've heard from most of the student leaders across the system. Right now we have a system through differential tuition where students get a lot of buy-in into how new initiatives or specific areas on campuses are addressed with tuition increases. And I feel like we have this good model right now to the extent that we have base increases on campus, but then also differential tuition increases where we can address certain areas, but that encompasses a wide and serious amount of student buy-in into those proposals. And I would just like to say in how we develop this tuition structure, or how we advocate for a certain tuition structure, retaining that involvement from students and the kind of say that they have is going to be essential in getting them to buy into it. I know I've talked to students across the system, and they have overwhelmingly supported the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, but that has been the one caveat. They say, right now we have all of this, we are empowered to be a part of this process by the differential tuition structure that we have set up so far, and we want to continue to be just as active of a partner. So that's that. And then I'd also like to add my support for Jeff's concern, and say that I've been so impressed on how 13 chancellors have been able to get together and support the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. And I feel like while we need to remain unified as a system, being responsive to Chancellor's concerns about how we can push flexibilities down and how we can work with chancellors so that we're not a burden ourselves on their campuses while still being united as a system is incredibly important to me, and I think we need to be very responsive to those kind of concerns as they come up.
Thank you. Did you want to comment? Good comments, Regent Wingate. I thought wanted to say one or two things quickly in response, and this is kind of two things you raised are kind of the yin and yang of it in a sense. That is, I think the intent of all the chancellors is certainly to continue to consult with their students thoroughly before they bring forward to this board, or if Madison were spun off as a public authority, a new board for the public authority, any tuition increase. So it's regardless of what happens, a board will still have to approve tuition increases. And that's the yin on the tuition. The yang is, how much authority do chancellors have to make decisions on their own without the board's oversight or intervention directly. I mean, ultimately, any board has oversight, but as usual, this is kind of a balance. So on tuition, in either model, chancellors would be coming forward to a board, which I know this board, and any board worth its salt, will ask me and the chancellors, well, what level of consultation with your students did you have? So I think I want to assure you and the other students that would continue.
We're going to hear from, I'm going to get Chancellor Gao and Chancellor Martin. Did somebody else say something to me? Oh, let me go to Chancellor Gao first, then Chancellor Martin, and then we'll come to Chancellor.
On the flexibilities, I think that's just making explicit something you've already been doing, and we've heard about the differential tuitions in our campus. That has been a very positive thing, and we've hired about 95 more faculty now and 20 some odd more staff, and enrollment's at an all-time high. And so, I think really people are just saying make that a little more explicit, but I don't think that's anything terribly radical. And here at Platteville, we saw that with the Tri-Campus Initiative, and so these are the kind of things we're already doing, and I think everybody supports that. On the legislative relations piece that you've been talking about, I think we're all very in touch with legislators, and that's something you want us to do, and we feel encouraged to do. And I can say in my own community, this very topic that we're talking about, I've heard from both Representative Jennifer Schilling and Senator Dan Kapanke on it, and they both support more flexibility, and I think really maybe the way to think about it is local responsibility for the campus. And I imagine that all my colleagues would say the same thing, which is really important to remember at a time, as we saw on Tuesday, when this state is so polarized. I mean, just dramatically polarized, that we do have something that will bring together people. I think, the thorny question, the contentious question, frankly, I'll state it, is who's responsible for oversight of Madison, that campus. I mean, that's really what is the thing that I think people are grappling with. So on the flexibilities, we all would greatly appreciate having those. I think we feel we have a lot of them now. It would just be helpful to have that more reaffirmed.
Chancellor Martin.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had just a few points I wanted to make. Good morning. First of all, in the spirit of serious deliberation and disagreement, which I believe we're going to celebrate tomorrow, I think it's chilling to suggest that chancellors shouldn't be permitted to talk with one another. I also want to clarify the record and say that when I made a suggestion to other chancellors, I sent at the same time that suggestion to President Riley and asked for a meeting to discuss an amendment to the governor's budget bill, because I believe the most realistic opportunity to get flexibilities for all the campuses is to add to what's already in the governor's budget, not to oppose it and ask for less for Madison in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership. President Riley asked that we not meet together until he has a written analysis of the possibility of amending the governor's budget, and we conceded to that. There was no meeting of chancellors. But I do worry about a claim that chancellors should not be meeting to talk about possible third ways together without permission from the regents. I can't imagine a lot of academics wanting to take leadership positions in a system that suppresses that. And so in that spirit, I'd also simply like to say that the comparison chart that you have between the governor's budget bill and the Wisconsin Idea Partnership is a set of comparisons with which our legal staff at UW-Madison and we don't agree entirely. And I have brought two charts, one which is our analysis of the differences and similarities. The other chart is a commentary on systems chart comparing the governor's bill with Wisconsin Idea Partnership. And I would hope that people would be interested in looking at another version of how they compare, despite the notion that you have to speak with one voice. I understand the importance of one voice on legislative policy when there's actual agreement. I think in this case there is honest disagreement about what is best for the University of Wisconsin-Madison and possibly for the other campuses. And what's important to me is seeing the resistance to any differentiation for UW-Madison or any other grouping of campuses in your reaction. It makes me much less trusting of the forms of delegation and differentiation that are going to allow Wisconsin's world-class research institution to continue competing on a world stage, which is something that the state really badly needs to be able to preserve. Our market, our competition, our audience is not just within the system, it is also that, but it is also global. And we need every tool that the governor's budget proposal allows for UW-Madison. Having the other campuses get the flexibilities they need is also urgent, which is the reason for trying to amend what's already in the governor's bill so that everything is additive rather than subtracting from what UW-Madison could get and what it needs in order to serve the state of Wisconsin. As far as questions of red tape go, I think just in the interest of candor, there are a number of political leaders, the governor, legislators, who have said repeatedly, to me at least and to others, that they've heard the exact same thing from every chancellor about the problems of red tape and impediments at the system level. Not all of the impediments are at the state level. Finally, I would simply say that if you are willing to look at a different comparison of the proposals, I brought enough for everybody, and I'd be glad to share them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Martin. Chancellor Wells.
I don't know how to handle this mic as well as Joe Gow, given his background. I'd like to start first, though, speaking as a chancellor from one of the greater Wisconsin universities, not so much outstate university, and I'd like to use this opportunity to make a request to the press in honor of my mother. When chancellors from our outstate universities are referred to as chancellors, it's the Oshkosh Chancellor or the Stevens Point Chancellor or the Green Bay Chancellor. I think my mother, if she were alive, being an Italian-American from Calabria, would be on the press to use her son's name and not be the chancellor from outer Mongolia. But nonetheless, I had to get that in. I just wanted to speak to the whole issue of, how do you make sure that there's the assurances that the flexibilities and the ability for us to lead will come to us. And I've been here 11 years, and I've served as chancellor for the board appointed by Governor Tommy Thompson and with my president, Catherine Lyle, and I've served as chancellor for the board appointed by Governor Doyle and my chancellor, Kevin Riley. And in all those 11 years, I've never, ever had an experience with any of those board members or either president that when they gave their word, they kept their word. I've also never, ever been surprised by any of them in any major way, which in my opinion are the two major things in terms of keeping good relationships between leaders, the rules of no surprise and the rules of keeping your word. So as we look at this legislation in terms of trying to design it so all of us can have more comfort that the right kind of flexibilities and accountabilities will come to us at the campus level, there's only so much of that that you should or can put in legislation. I don't need it etched in blood. I think that I can count on the word of people here in Wisconsin who have served on our boards and who will serve on our boards in the future. I think I can count on the word of the presidents of the system now and in the future. And I think that's important. With regard to red tape, it would be probably interesting at some time to have a panel of people from our campuses, provosts, vice presidents, and so on, who work in a more day-to-day way with our assistant staff to understand the red tape they're most concerned about. Because a lot of the red tape that you wrap us around in is a red tape that comes from the state. And I don't think a lot of us on the campus even understand what red tape is what red tape. And so it will help us all, I think, to get this all unpacked, and we have this historic opportunity that I truly hope we all figure out how to work out so we can move in a direction to get the leadership and management flexibilities that we all need. And I really implore us to be careful. It's pretty easy in a lot of times in organizations where you're having a problem doing something, you're frustrated, you blame it on whoever is right above you, not necessarily understanding what that person has to deal with, or that entity or that board has to deal with above them. So I caution us to be very careful about where this red tape is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. I know Chancellor Bengala and Chancellor Lovell had just a couple of observations that they were going to maybe potentially make about flexibilities. Would you like to do that? Or? I don't know if we need to, based on discussion. You okay?
Yeah, I think we're fine. Go ahead.
Are you hungry? Other comments, observations? If not, I'll turn it back to President Riley. This was certainly a spirited discussion.
Very much so. Thank you for that. Tomorrow we will be looking in more detail at our 2011 accountability report, which does measure the university's performance across a variety of benchmarks. And when Heather Kim leads us in that discussion tomorrow, she'll highlight some of the new measures and other improvements I think we've made in this comprehensive report. And this, what I'll say next, goes to really Regent Davis's request or question. In addition to other feedback from the members of the Joint Committee on Finance, I heard some legislators say that indeed that the current report is too exhaustive, because I had a colloquy with them saying, you know, we hear that you want us to be more accountable, and certainly if you're going to seriously consider the flexibilities in the Wisconsin Idea Partnership, which we want you to do, we want to be more accountable in ways that you want us to be more accountable. If you give us those flexibilities, you certainly deserve that. And I made a connection between the deep level of the budget cuts in our operating budget to the need to have the flexibilities on our part to deal with those, to the need to be more accountable if we were given those flexibilities. And it was interesting because I said, you know, we send this report, I held it up, we had given it to them in their packets down every year, and our folks go around and visit with many of you, and we really don't get much back from you. So can you help us understand your sense of what the accountability you want from us is? And several of them said the report is too exhaustive. And I think that reflects the fact that these are people who in their lives as legislators are dealing with every issue in the state, and they don't have time to cut down the way this board does, or the rest of us who work in the university, to the level and the number of performance indicators that we tend to cut down to. They said they thought a simpler, leaner report would be better, indeed, for their purposes. So I think we should listen to that feedback, keeping in mind at the same time that this accountability report really serves two masters. One is accountability to the legislature and through them the general public, transparency to the general public and everybody. The other side of that is it's a kind of continuous improvement document for ourselves, and we need to have some of the performance indicators for our own continuous improvement that the legislators may not be in any given year at least particularly interested in. So I think it's a good time to rethink our original intent for that report. And remember, it really came out of the SAVE Commission many years ago. It was conceived as a way to demonstrate our performance to the state's elected officials, earn their trust, and secure specific operational flexibilities thereby. Well, here we are many years later, still talking about those operational flexibilities, but I think, and I hope, closer to actually getting them than we have been at any time in my 15 years in the state anyway. So I think as we engage the legislative leaders, especially in a more intensive conversation about flexibilities, we ought to commit ourselves to that kind of compact, going back to the SAVE Commission in a contemporary way. So we will be doing that, trying to have a discussion with the legislators about which performance indicators are most of use to them. If there are some that aren't there that they want to see, we would certainly be happy to have that conversation. And then I think if we can get through that conversation, this goes back to the question Regent Bartel asked, establishing with them some regular reporting mechanism on those particular indicators in addition to just sending them a report. And again, one additional indicator I will suggest to them is, how are we doing on this devolution thing? I mean, part of the idea of, do you trust us or don't you trust us is, well, if you've got to report every year on exactly what you're doing, and I'll say right now, all the chancellors here and all the chancellors in the future, if we go in that direction, are welcome to join me in that report. And you can tell whichever board you work for, how you think I and the rest of them are doing on devolving those flexibilities down to you. So I'd like to actually formally propose that as a new performance indicator, but then work with them not to just keep adding performance indicators, because remember, they wanted a more compact document, how we can focus on several that are of most interest to them. And Michael alluded to what's going on in South Carolina, where indeed the new governor there and the higher ed leadership, my understanding, have agreed to 5 particular performance indicators that the state would really want to focus on, working with the university leadership. So maybe we can and should get there. So I want to compliment everybody on this discussion. This is one of the more lively and participative discussions I think I've seen in my time as president, and the momentousness of the issues on the table before us, I think, require that kind of full and thoughtful discussion. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, President Pruitt.
Thank you, at which point I will do the most popular thing imaginable, which is to allow this room to take a break and have lunch. Thank you again for the conversation. The lunch is in the Belsey Commons. Committees were originally scheduled to meet